It was like the Messiah had ridden into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. And Moon would say, and Pot would say, Reverend Moon say, all men are brothers.
Except for Bill Clinton. The Times worried that he might have had KGB connections, then that he was an asset of the CIA. It raised $100,000 for the Contras fighting the left in Nicaragua.
I believe they lose tens of millions of dollars a year, perhaps as high as $40 million a year.
One man has seen the truth.
Moon spent millions more funding right-wing foundations and pressure groups.
He's tasted the bitter evils of communism in North Korea.
I mean, the amount of money Moon has invested in the Washington Times alone is just staggers the imagination.
What, you're saying that nobody else has ever spent as much money lobbying in Washington as Moon?
No one I'm aware of.
The paper declined to let us film its operations.
Has the Washington Times always been independent?
I do think so. In fact, every editor that I've known, and I've known them all, has made the point at different times that they receive much less pressure from the owner than the owners of any other newspaper might.
But in 1987, editor Bill Cheshire resigned, accusing the paper of augmenting news agency copy in Moon's favor.
I said, this has never been acceptable or ethical performance anywhere I've ever worked. It's totally irregular, totally improper, and totally dishonest and reprehensible. Well, didn't do any good.
And the editors of the Washington Times have told me that never once has the man with the vision interfered in the editorial policies of the Washington Times. Reverend Moon never tried to tell him what to say, who to endorse.
Moon invited George Bush to celebrate the birth of another new paper in Latin America.
You know, a lot of my friends in South America don't know about the Washington Times, but it is an independent voice.
I doubt very seriously if George Bush has any real understanding of the Reverend Moon and the Unification Church and what they represent in terms of crazy theology and all the other things that are a part of the Moon story.
Some of Moon's contacts were far to the right of the Washington Times. In Japan, after the war, he'd met Ryoichi Sasakawa, a rich and powerful fascist, who'd been imprisoned by the Americans as a war criminal.
I heard him say to us, referring to himself, he said, "I am Mr. Moon's dog." Well, this is the most powerful man in Japan who's essentially saying that he is under Mr. Moon, that he's serving Mr. Moon's purposes.
Another of Moon's Japanese contacts was Yoshio Kadama, an extreme right-winger with ties to the Japanese underworld.
Kodama is reported as saying that the people say Mr. Moon is the Messiah. Well, that's fine, but Mr. Moon can't be the Messiah without me because I'm the man who supplies him with money.
Moon and the Japanese poured cash into the World Anti-Communist League, which included neo-Nazis, fascists, and even death squad members from South America.
His organization, from my point of view, was more of a political effort, that is to save the world from the evil empire, than it was to save individuals from the devil.
Moon preached love, but aligned himself with murderous Latin regimes that tortured or killed their left-wing opponents. Latin America, he believed, would be the graveyard of communism. He was deeply disillusioned with the United States. Satan created this hell on earth, he said.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
that I will...
Moon had spent many millions supporting Republican causes.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States. So help me God.
But the Reagan administration declined to pardon him for his tax offense.
He was extremely bitter and decided that he could better grow his organization, better grow his influence outside our shores.
In poor Uruguay, the army had won a wasting war with Tupamaros guerrillas. The capital, Montevideo, was an offshore banking center where rich foreigners could hide their cash. For Moon, it held other attractions too.
A friendly legal environment, that is, laws and regulations that were not as well developed as here in the United States. A fairly uneducated and poor population who were ready to accept a message of anyone who made promises for a better life.
Moon called Uruguay his oasis. Today, he owns newspapers and sponsors radio programs that preach family values.
Muy buenas noches, queridos amigos.
As Moon sees it, if only the world would listen, all its problems, from AIDS to racial hatred, would simply vanish.
If all peoples follow our vision, why not? We saw. War also. This is Messiah's law.
Moon built Uruguay's first luxury hotel. He also bought a bank. On one occasion, bank employees claimed that 4,000 Japanese Moonies had suddenly showed up, depositing millions of dollars in cash.
Que todavía tenían la faja de la Reserva Federal de los Estados Unidos sin uso y que superaron la cifra de los 80 millones de dólares en total del depósito efectuado en el transcurso de casi una semana.
More than once, the authorities accused the bank of breaching banking rules. A local journalist asked embarrassing questions. Sometime later, as he told the judge, he was grabbed by two men in a car who stuck a gun in his mouth. They said they had no connection with Moon, but warned him off. Even in his new haven, Moon was under fire.
Y yo me acuerdo que la señora Moon dice, ¿hasta cuándo van a seguir pensando que nosotros somos malos? Yo me sentí profundamente identificado porque en él no había ni una gota de resentimiento o de rencor o decir, ¿por qué me hicieron sufrir, no? Es como un poco cuando Jesús estaba en la cruz.
One of Moon's key men in Uruguay is Jorge Goldenzopf, a veteran of the dirty war with the left. A former communist, he joined the secret police.
El reverendo Moon ha sido mi salvador. Yo he cambiado mi vida ha sido salvada literalmente por él. Es la experiencia de mi vida. Él ha sido mi salvador.
By the late 1980s, Moon owned so much property in Montevideo that locals wryly renamed it Moontevideo. Moonies say that this palatial building was going to be his home, his Latin American sanctuary. Instead, he chose a lush resort on the ocean and a ranch by a river where he could fish. Here, he hoped to find peace.
He fishes for the physical fish, but this is symbolic of many things. You know, he fishes, one fish could be a great leader who listens to him.
He said he would like his own fleet of submarines to free him from national boundaries. In 1989, one of Moon's greatest dreams came true, the fall of the Berlin Wall. To him, it seemed as though he'd won his lifelong struggle against communism.
Who did liberate communism? To me, very clear, is the Reverend Moon as a Messiah.
In Latin America, Moon would spend millions. He said he gave the bait to Uruguay. Then the bigger fish of Argentina and Brazil kept their mouths open.
He thinks he can literally buy countries.
Absolutely.
Several countries did take the bait, including Brazil. In 1994, Moon bought a swathe of its Pantanal region, a vast area known for its extraordinary beauty. Here would be the new Garden of Eden, where Moon would have absolute dominion.
Reverend Moon named it because he wants this place to be as pristine and as natural as it was the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve were created by Heavenly Father. And Reverend Moon said that this area could be in the same shape like the Garden of Eden when the Adam